Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is One Day Today, episode 143. So good to have you with us. And we made it here, rain or shine. Little obstacles. We had power outage and raining cats and dogs, but we're here. Really excited about our guest today. But just to kind of get in the zone here, why we have this space, why we have this stage, is to really share stories of people who are up to things bigger than themselves, and what they faced and overcame in their lives that allowed them to discover themselves, and you know what made them able to share the gift that they are and that they have. And that's why we're here, is to really empower you to share your gift, to shine your shine, and to whatever it is, whether it's a song that you haven't written, whether it's a book or a story that you have to tell. The fact is, there are people in this world who will and can benefit from what you uniquely have, and what power you uniquely have. And it's a gift that keeps on giving. And I could tell you, 143 episodes deep, there's not been one exception to that. And I'm thrilled to be here, and we'll go to the next 143 episodes. But we've waited long enough. Let's just jump in. But first, let me welcome our co-host Matthew. Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy. We made it.
We made it. We're here.
We made it. Oh man, it's been a fun day. Like I feel like
been.
this is one of those things where I don't know, like everything conspired to get us here at this moment, and I don't know why or what's going to come from it, but I'm trusting it and just rolling with it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. We made it, though. All
We
the
made it.
obstacles aside.
Yeah.
I say we bring in Mark.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it, and let's just let's just jump right into it today. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
It's going fantastic.
Thanks for having me here today.
It's a real pleasure to have you, Mark, and we're excited to hear your story and hear you share. So if it's all right with you, we're going to jump right in. You ready to share with us?
Sure.
All right.
Awesome. Do it.
Without further ado, the stage is yours, Mark.
Well, obviously, I'm about lungs and I'm about breathing. So I would like everyone to close their eyes and take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And as you open your eyes, I want you to imagine breathing through a straw for a year. Well, that was me. And then about 3.5 years later, that was me again. Except this time, the straw was one like you stir coffee with. And I'm known as the lung transplant stonemason because after 2 double lung transplants in August of 2020, I returned back to my career and my craft of stonemasonry. And people tell me this story is unheard of, and it is. Nobody's ever done this before. But that's why I'm using my story and my message to inspire people and show them that we all have a version of the unheard of, and we can all tell it loud and clear. My story started out in 2010. I was diagnosed with silicosis fibrosis. That's a lung disease associated with breathing in a fine silica dust that occurs when you're cutting stone. But that's not what led to my demise. What led to my demise or my downfall was Superman disease. Well, Superman disease, I'm sure people are asking, what's that? Well, that's the one where we think we're invincible and nothing can hurt us. But the cure is quick. It's when a doctor comes into your hospital room, stands by your bed, and says, Mark, you're dying. Like, boom, that quick, you're cured. And I went for a year. I was on oxygen for a year. I was in pulmonary rehab for several months. And then about a year, almost to the day that I first entered the hospital, I got the call to fly to Colorado and get my first transplant. And so that was quite the ordeal. It was a 12-hour surgery. And ironically, the surgeon had to use a hammer and chisel to remove my lungs. Two of the tools that I built my career and my reputation with were now being used to save my life. And when all this started in 2010, I was hit with a massive dose of Life Interrupted. And that hit me harder than any hammer I've ever struck my chisel with. I almost died when I first went to the hospital. I was in the hospital for 8 days, and then when I was released, I really couldn't even breathe outside air. And my career was, they told me I was done, that I would never do stonework again. Well, for that next year, I was like, I was in training. I mean, I had never fought for my life before. I was a fighter, but not on that level. And people talk about being a warrior, but when you're fighting for your life, it's on a way different level. And I found out a lot about myself in that year. I went really, really low, and then I had to pick myself up. I remember in the beginning, I thought I would die of depression because I couldn't do stonework anymore before this lung disease would ever get me. I started doing stonework when I was 17 years old. And for way more than half of my life, almost 2/3 of my life now, I've been a stonemason. And I was a natural for it. I was really born for this. I just loved it so much that I couldn't get it out of my head. And well, when I got my first transplant, I was days away from being part of history. It was a 12-hour surgery, like I said. They had to remove my lungs with the hammer and chisel, and I lost a lot of blood in the process. So I was given almost 9 units of blood. And so I basically got a transplant, lung transplant, and a transfusion all in the same night. I basically fought. And one thing that really helped me out in this process was I had 4 college teammates, Scotty, Brian, Troy, and Shannon. I used to be a college basketball player, and I had 4 teammates from my college team, and they would call me regularly, and they would remind me that I was a fighter, that I was capable of doing this. And one of these lights went out, guys, so let me see what I could do here. Here we go. That's a little better. And so I'm very thankful for those guys that they were in my life at that time, and they still are. But they reminded me that I was a fighter and that I was not a quitter. And that was one thing that my father instilled in me. My father was a Hall of Fame basketball coach here in New Mexico. And he never let me quit anything. He never taught me how to quit. And my mother was a woman of very strong faith. And I can recall after the doctor came in my room and told me I was dying and that the only thing that could save me was a double lung transplant. But then he said that I probably wouldn't make it that long because it was a lengthy process. And then about 10 minutes after he left, my mom and dad walked in. And my dad asked me, what did the doctor say? And I snapped at him. And he wasn't the kind of man that you snapped at. He was a big man. He was a disciplinarian, and he was all about respect. And I said, he said, I'm dying, Dad. And he just took a pause, calmed himself. And then he gave me some of the best words he's ever given me. He looked at me straight in my eye and he said, well, you better get busy then. And I looked at him and I said, excuse me? And he said, well, you better get busy then. Either quitting and dying or fighting like a warrior. But don't waste anybody's time. And you better get busy making up your mind. And I'm going to remind you that I never raised any quitter. So it shouldn't take you too long. And then my mom followed that up with, son, you have to give it to God. But the kind of help you need right now, God's really the only one that can help you. And those are some of the best words they ever gave me. And my mom and dad are gone from this earth now, but the things that they've taught me, I still use them daily in my life. And I was good for about 3.5 years. And then I had a fall. I stood up too fast after I was tying my shoes and I passed out. I fell against my dresser and the handle hit me in between my ribs on my back on my left side, and which caused a pulmonary embolism. And it didn't take very long to start showing the effects. Within a couple of days, I couldn't walk distance. I was breathing real bad. And I ended up going up to the transplant center where I got my first transplant in Colorado. And basically, they told me I was in chronic rejection and there was nothing they could do for me, that I had 2 months to live and there was nothing they could do for me. And I said, my reply was, which one of you guys did God call? And they said, what? And I said, well, which one of you did God call? And they said, Mark, you can't be in denial. This is really happening. You're not going to beat this. And I said, look, if God didn't call you, he didn't call me. So yours is just an opinion, albeit a professional opinion, but opinion nonetheless. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep fighting with everything I got, with Jesus and God. And it looks like you folks are ready to check out. So check out. Because that's the one thing I can't stand more than anything is a quitter. Because the way I see it is quitters are basically cowards shrouding themselves in the tools of the weak. And so they never said anything about a pulmonary embolism. So I believed them, but I was mad because they quit on me. So I came home to die, but I was just trying to make it 2 months and 1 day. So they wouldn't be right. But at 3 months, the great doctors at St. Joseph's Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, called me and said they were willing to give me an evaluation. And so I drove up the very next morning, and within 6 hours, they found a pulmonary embolism the size of a nickel. It's basically a ticking time bomb in my lung. And I can recall the first doctor that talked to me about it. He said, Mark, I know you're coming here looking for a miracle, but I have to tell you, the miracle's already happened, man. You should have been dead 2 months and 25 days ago. And I didn't really have anything to say to that. So they proceeded to do the evaluation. with that in mind, that I was living way longer than I should have, I just kept fighting. And I was in the hospital for the evaluation for 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, before they discharged me, they said, we're going to list you. We're going to list you. And, but that process took about a month. So I got discharged on December 19th of 2015, but I wasn't listed until January 19th of 2016. So that month, people say it's one day at a time. Well, one day at a time became one sunrise at a time, one sunset at a time. And then it became 1 hour at a time. Every time I went to the restroom, which was only 15 feet away, my oxygen would tank into the low 60s and my heart rate would jump up to the 150s. And so I was risking cardiac arrest just walking 15 feet towards the restroom. And everything was a challenge. Even eating was a challenge. I'd take a couple of bites of something and I'd be breathing like I ran a marathon. And then in this time, I really had to challenge myself to keep fighting. I remember standing in the mirror and talking to myself in the mirror. I had to pass in front of these two double sinks. There was a big mirror there. And I had to pass in front of this mirror every time I went to the restroom or every time I had a shower. And I would look in the mirror and I would say, what's it going to be today, Mark? Are you going to fight like a warrior? Are you going to fight for your daughter? Or are you going to punk out and go curl up in a ball and quit? And, there was a lot of things that I used my mirror for. When I played college basketball, the game really didn't start for me until somebody hit me in the face or talked about my mama. So, I didn't really have anybody there to fire me up like that with trash talk. So I had to do it to myself. I'd look in the mirror and I'd say, come on, Mark, it's already going to be Christmas. You're still wearing your Halloween costume. I mean, I was 120 pounds. All you could see was bones and veins. My skin was gray. If my head would have started changing shape, I would have thought I was morphing into a little alien dude. But this is how I would get myself going. This is how I kept myself going. And in that time, there was a lot of talks with God. There was a lot of talks with God, and there was a lot of praying going on. And I can recall the night that I got the phone call to go to the hospital. I was listed on January 19th, and on January 23rd, I got a phone call from the hospital saying, get to the hospital, we have your lungs. Well, prior to this phone call, about a minute or two before, I got the sensation that my body was floating away. And I grabbed onto the covers, white knuckled those things. I was literally holding on for dear life. And then about a minute later, it happened again. And my daughter witnessed this. And I mean, that poor girl, she had a front row seat on my deathbed longer than she should have. And I'll always be grateful for her for standing by me and reinforcing in my mind that I was a warrior. I love that girl so much. And then about a minute after that was when the phone call came. Well, when I got to the hospital, I told the doctor right away. I said, "Doc, I'm having this sensation that my body's floating away. What's going on?" And he said, "That's not your body floating away. That's your soul trying to leave your body. You're in your last hour of life, man." And I told him, like, "Well, what are we waiting for then? Let's go. Let's do this." And so he said, and these words, I'll never forget these words. He said, "Mark, I have to tell you this. We're going to fight for you with everything we got. But there's a real high chance that you're not going to make it through this." I mean, I was 120 pounds. I was in a wheelchair. And he was right. And I knew that. I knew that. And I looked at him and I told him, "Doc, you had me. I'll fight for you with everything I got. I know the other part." And then something came over me that I don't know what it's hard to describe it, but I just told him, I said, "Doc, if there's somebody else who has a better chance with these lungs, give them to them. I've had my extra time and I want somebody else to have theirs too." And then I said, "And this thing I'm doing now, Doc, this ain't living. I want you to take my organs and give them to as many people as you can. The only thing that's messed up on me is my lungs. Everything else is good. I've been checking." And he says, "Mark, you know what you're talking about, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I'll live more through these other people than I'm doing right now." And he says, "Well, Mark, that's the thing. There's no other match in 500-mile radius. And we can't go past that." And so I told him again, "I'm ready when you are. Let's do this." And it was rough. It was a 12-hour surgery. I was in a coma for almost 9 days. It seemed like 5 minutes. I was in the hospital for just a little under a month. And I required 4 other surgeries besides the transplant. And so in that time, it was rough. I mean, I was afraid to fall asleep because I didn't know if I'd wake up. And I can remember when they came and they said, "We're letting you out today." I told them, "You better not be playing with me." "You better not be playing with me." And they weren't playing with me. But then when they let me out, for about 3 weeks, I was wondering why they let me out, because it was rough. And thank God I had my mom taking care of me. She's amazing. She was one of the most amazing warriors that I'll ever know. She battled stage 4 lung cancer for 7 years. And she did it with a smile, never a complaint. And I'm just thankful for everything her and my dad gave me. Well, I died on the table in my second surgery. And I got a ringside seat to the battle for my soul. And then I had Jesus, my dad, who had passed away a couple years before that, my first donor, Michelle Stella, and my first mentor, one of my best friends, my lung brother, Jaime Munoz. They were all holding hands around my bed, and they sent me back with the message, "You're not supposed to be here. It's not your time. You have to go back. There's more for you to do." And then I imagine that's when they shocked my heart and brought me back. Well, living after you've died is very difficult. It's very hard to find your place in life, your purpose, where you belong. Uh, and a couple years in, I was in a real dark place. Um, and not just my medical stuff. It's admittedly some of my own bad choices put me in this dark place too. And I remember in early August of 2020, I was having a conversation with a great buddy of mine. He's almost like a little brother. We were having burgers at the house when, they kind of opened things up a little bit where COVID was still raging. And I just had this thing in my mind because, they're talking about it attacks your lungs. Uh, the immunosuppressed people, it's going to get them. I'm having trouble with this light, guys. I'm sorry, but we'll just adapt, like I pretty much have been doing my whole life. So uh, we were sitting there, we were having a burger, and he asked me, "How are things going?" And I said, I wish I could just do stonework again, man. I think I would be all right. And he says, "Well, why don't you try it?" And I told him, "I don't know if I can." And he got mad at me. He called me out. And he said, "Oh man, you're the one always telling everybody you got to believe in yourself and don't doubt yourself." He's like, "Just a bunch of crap, man. You don't even live by those words." And I looked at him. I said, "I see what you're doing, and you're right. You're right." Well, a week after this conversation, he passed away in a motorcycle accident. Rest in peace, Rico Roybal. And so I vowed that conversation would not be in vain. And I returned to doing stonework in August of 2020. And that's how the lung transplant stonemason was born. I was doing something that nobody had ever done before. And basically, I started out doing it just to find myself again. But then when I saw that the effect it was having on other people, how I was motivating them and inspiring them, it really took on a life of its own. And so I just started going with that. And I just trying to provide inspiration for people who need it. And that's when I kind of turned into the helper, a humble, hardworking helper. And it's been one of the toughest things I've ever done. I mean, it's right in between the recovery from the first transplant and the second transplant, because nobody makes a comeback to stonework when they're 51 years old, much less all that I had been through. But the thing of it is that if you eliminate quitting as an option, then it's just not an option. It's either fight or fight more. See, the thing about being a warrior is that we understand that our fight may lead to our death, but we are not fixated on that. We've accepted it and we move on in our fight. And the thing about being a warrior is you're only a warrior as long as you don't quit. And once you do, then you're not a warrior anymore. And that's just that's the way it goes. You're just a coward that's quitting. And when I talked about the tools of the week a little bit earlier, to me, those tools are making excuses, blaming others, wallowing in self-pity, and complaining. I can assure you, if you use those tools, you'll never accomplish anything except for ruining your life. And when you're a warrior, it takes courage. It takes strength. The strength of Michelle Stella, my first donor, who fought to stay alive long enough to save 6 people from death. Or the courage of the doctors at St. Joe's Hospital, who took on a 120-pound man who couldn't even walk and saved his life. And when you move into this realm of fighting for your life and you win, it really gives you this belief that you can do anything. So it really wasn't far-fetched for me to go back to stonework. The thing about believing in yourself is we say, I believe in myself. But then a lot of us, we operate in self-sabotage. And those two things don't go together. You can't say, I believe in myself and then operate in self-sabotage. Those two don't mix. They never will. It's kind of like a peanut butter and tuna fish sandwich. Those two things will never go together. They never will. And when I talk about self-sabotage, I'm talking about negative self-talk, negative self-perceptions, feeding your fears and doubts, or listening to others cast their doubts on you or their negative words. Many times in life, we feed our fears and doubts, and then we wonder why they became monsters. Well, they became monsters because we fed them. And so I've learned that to just starve my fears and doubts. They get nothing. They don't get leftovers, scraps, a crumb, a whiff, a sniff. If I'm talking about what I'm cooking, they don't even get to listen. They get to die. Because if I don't make sure that happens, they're going to make sure that happens to me. They're going to start with my dreams, my goals, my aspirations, and then eventually me. And I talk about things from a stonemason's perspective. And many times in life, we build these walls around ourselves, and the bricks are made of fear and doubt. And then when we're walled in and we can't move, we become the why me guy. Why did this happen? Why is this happening to me? Well, figure it out. You're the one that built the wall, and you got to get out of there. So either you scale over the wall, tunnel under it, or bust right through it. But get out of there. If not, you're going to die. And I mean, I'm a very faithful man. And the Bible, there's something that's mentioned in the Bible 365 times. And that's fear not. You could literally go to your Bible every day and find a different passage that tells us we don't have to be scared. And Philippians 4:13 clearly tells us, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So why would we ever doubt ourselves? See, the thing about doubt is there'll be thousands of people in your life that will doubt you. Don't ever become one of them. Never become one of them. And when you eliminate these things from your life and you silence the negatives, then you have a chance to tell your story of the unheard of. And this goes for everybody. I'm not some special being with some kind of powers. I have everything I have the same things that everybody else has. I've just found a way to tap into them. And that's what I try to show people now. And you have this too, but you got to get rid of all these other things first. And I talk about it like, it's like kind of like you have your garage, right? And you can't even park your car in the garage because it's full of boxes. Boxes of stuff that you've been carrying for decades from house to house. And now you don't have room for anything good in there. And so I tell people all the time, don't have a garage sale, just throw it all out. It's holding you back. It's kind of like pulling a U-Haul with no wheels. It's just holding you back and preventing from the good things to come into your life because you're holding on to all these other junk, and it just doesn't serve you. So if it doesn't serve you, you got to let it go. And when I was able to do that is really when I was able to start moving forward in power and positivity. And then, you know, there's been challenging times. None of this has been easy. Every single day is a challenge. But that's okay, because nothing good comes easy. And if it does, it's not going to last. But it takes discipline. And my father taught me this. His take on discipline was, discipline is not something you do with a stick or a whip. It's just doing the things in your training and development that you must do. Either you do them or you don't. That's discipline. And to further the point, self-discipline is doing the things in your training and development that you absolutely dislike the most, but doing them like you love them so much, more than anything. That's self-discipline. And, you know, I have so many life lessons that I keep with me to this day. And my dad's been gone for over 9 years. But the things that he taught me, I keep with me all the time. And the things my mom taught me, she passed at the end of January of this year. And I keep those with me as well. And in January, 3 days before she passed, I had my 7-year anniversary for my second lung transplant. The average is I think less than 2 years for a second. But you only look at averages if you're an average person. And so it's important to remember that nobody wakes up and says, I feel like being mediocre today, or I want to be average today. You know, those your habits and your actions put you in that group. And you know, there's 3 things in life that will never lie to you. That's God, Jesus, and your mirror. And I recommend everybody have a strong relationship with each, because you could lie to them, but they'll never lie back to you. And you know, if you're not moving the right way, your mirror is going to tell you. And if you got something going on that's not supposed to be going on, your creator would tell you. And it's important to listen when you're not using your ears. I hope that makes sense to people. You got to listen sometimes with your mind and with your heart and soul. And I've moved into this area of public speaking now, and to inspire people. I want to force people to go look in their mirror and say, I just heard about this guy who's doing stonework after 2 double lung transplants. What's your excuse? Because I even have that guy. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Nick Vujicic. He has no arms and no legs. And when I saw this man speak, and I saw a video of him swimming across an Olympic-sized swimming pool, I went straight to my mirror and I said, Nick is walking across the stage with no legs, Mark. He's swimming with no arms. What is your excuse today? And that's when I was really moved to get into this this new area of my life. And I started planting the seeds for my next career as I'm winding up my stonework career. I mean, it's going to be super hard for me to put down the hammer and chisel. But at least now I have something that I love as much as that. So it won't feel like I'm leaving a huge part of me behind. And I know my purpose. And my purpose is to be a humble, hardworking, and helpful servant. See, God showed me that I had a gift, but he made it very clear that that gift was not for me. It was for me to serve and me to help. And I've fallen in love with this new part of my life. I have a real passion for it. And I mean, if there's anything that I can say to people is whatever you're doing or trying to do, before even one muscle is moved, before even one action is taken, you have to believe that you can do it. If you can accomplish that and get it here and here, you've already won half of the battle, more than half of the battle. Because the actual physical act of it, that's the easy part. That's just the body following orders and being obedient. So that can't be the hardest part. And so you have to believe, be positive, and just breathe. And when I say breathe, I mean believe relentlessly every time you're attempting tasks of healing and enlightenment. Just breathe. Sometimes we take that for granted, but that is one of the scariest feelings anyone will ever experience, is not being able to breathe. It's like you're drowning on the land. It's hard to even describe. And this life that I've been through and these things that I've experienced, I don't really have enemies. But if I did, well, they might think that I'm their enemy, but I don't hold people in that regard anymore. But I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I've learned that after over 12 years on this journey, that this life is not for everybody. And even the ones it is for don't make it out alive. And so if you're not living your life to the fullest, you're wasting it. If you're not aspiring to be more every day or be better than the guy you used to be, you're just existing. You're basically a hamster on the wheel. And you got to fight for your life. If you want to persevere in anything, you have to be persistent. You have to love your life enough that you'll fight and you won't ever quit on it. And you got to love yourself just as much. Because if you don't, how can you truly love anybody else? If you don't take care of yourself, how can you help anyone else? And it starts here. It starts within. I look at leadership as it starts from within. Are you using your example? See, because sometimes people get mixed up. They think a boss and a leader are the same thing, and they're not. The boss tells you, go do that. The leader takes the first steps and then turns around and says, will you come and help me? And if they don't know how to do it, the leader shows them how to do it. The leader is always in the front, not standing back somewhere and pointing and saying, go do this, go do that. It's not how it works. And I believe that, I really believe that God has put me in this position to help the millions. I know he didn't put me in this position that no one's ever been in the history of the world, just so I could do more jobs and limp off into the sunset. Because that's what it'll look like. Let's be honest. I'm pretty beat up. But my mind is clear. My soul is beaming. and I feel great. But I feel the greatest when I'm helping people overcome things, when I'm helping people uh, to begin to help themselves. And I know that um God has put me in this position to do just that. And so I'm exploring everything I have to have the biggest effect that I possibly can. So I don't know. You guys probably have some questions for me.
Wow,
Hi, hi.
Mark, amazing. There's so much, and I can't recall a stage that we've ever just been speechless for 45 minutes, and I could listen to you talk for hours. There's so many things that come to mind. I'm so moved by you and your story, and well, two words that you are enlightened, my friend. First off, but the two words that came to mind just throughout the entire story was fearless and also rebirth. And I love how obviously you're a stonemason, and the symbolism of your work, it's beautiful how you've literally taken a situation that most people will never have to deal with and may never deal with, and you've built, you not only broke through that wall, you elevated that wall, you broke through it, and you built a
cathedral.
a cathedral of just it's just awe-inspiring, you and your story, and I am just so moved by it. And I just want to start off by saying that, like, thank you for sharing that. I needed to hear that. I know everybody needs to hear that. It's just I'm just grateful for you and who you are and who you're being, just more than words can describe.
Thank you. Gratitude is, you have to be grateful for everything. And one of the things that's helped me out the most is being grateful for my worst days. It served several different purposes. That's being grateful for your worst days. That's what really strengthens you at your core and your soul to who you truly are. And then it's a great way to check yourself. It's a great reference point. You start having a bad day, and then you can stop yourself, check yourself, and say, well, I got through my worst day, and this ain't even close to that, so I'm going to be okay. And then the last thing is that God has gotten me through 100% of my worst days, and there's no better record than that.
Oh, amen and aho. I just want to echo Abram really quick and just say thank you for being here and sharing. I needed to hear that too. And there was a theme that we had on the show. Like, we didn't come up with this. We didn't create this theme. It just kind of developed over the weeks with our guest. The theme used to be, on the other side of trauma lies wisdom for those who choose to seek it. And you exemplify that. Like, you are absolutely 100% living that right now. But the last few episodes, I've felt a shift in the theme that we've been kind of putting out into the world, and a shift in the theme the guests have been bringing to us. And I feel like you really clarified that for me in your sharing.
Well,
what it really, like, what really stood out the most, and there was so much that stood out the most, but this stood out the most for me, which was, we can do the impossible.
You're right. God took my impossible and turned it into I'm possible. And took my mess and turned me into a messenger. I remember one day after work, I was driving home, the window down, music off. I was so tired. I was so tired that I couldn't even cry. but I was too tired to stop the tears from rolling down my cheek. And then when I got home, after driving home in silence, I got home, I jumped in the shower, and I started doing that thing that I tell everybody not to do. Started feeling sorry for myself. And then I got mad at myself and I said, "You punk, how dare you? You should be grateful for this pain. You shouldn't even be here to feel it." And then in the next breath, I yelled these words. I said, "Well, God, help me turn my pain into power. Help me turn my heartaches into helpfulness. Help me turn my traumas into teachings for others." And I continue to say this when I pray. And it works. It really works, because you can't just take all this pain. You have to get something from it. You have to turn it into something. Like a great speaker, he's like a brother to me. I love this guy, Caden LeBray. He talks about get something from your pain before your pain takes something from you.
Mm-hmm.
And your pain can't be the definer of who you are. What has to be the definition of who you are is, what did you do after that pain? It's not good enough just to survive. You have to thrive after you survive. Because if you just sit there and use your sad story as a way to get sympathy or whatever, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Sooner or later, they're going to get tired of hearing it, and nobody cares. But if you want to make a difference and send a message, then you show people, don't let your pain stop you. Go out and get whatever it is you want. Go thrive. God has you still here for a reason, and it's not to be in pain and complain about it. Turn your pain into power.
Absolutely.
When people tell me, "Mark, you can't do this," all I hear is, "I will do this." And so I take their negative, I throw it in my fire and use it as fuel. And then you have an opportunity to forge something very powerful, very positive, incredible, and amazing. Or you can burn the whole place down, but it's up to us. It really is up to us. And, it can't just be about words. Words without action behind them, I refer to as alphabet soup. They're just a bunch of thrown together that don't mean nothing. And it's how you move. The saying that actions speak louder than words, that's the truth. It's how you move. It's not how you talk about it. Because we all know that guy that talks a good game, but he never backs it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just try to tell everybody, don't be that guy. Don't be the chef of the proverbial alphabet soup.
And we've all been that guy.
Alphabet soup, at least you could add salt, pepper, maybe some hot sauce, crackers. With this other stuff, you can't add nothing. It's just pitiful, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so I always recommend everyone back your words with action, because then it gives a meaning. And then they mean something to somebody else. And somebody can take that and use it in their own life, and then it has an impact. I could sit here and be a talking head, but if I didn't move in action, people are going to get tired of listening and say, this guy's full of it. He doesn't even live by his own words. And I thank Rico Roybaugh for reiterating that in my life and using my own words against me to challenge me.
And that takes us right into what I feel like is the most powerful act we can ever do or be or exist as, which is service. To exist as an act of service. And the healing that comes from that is beyond anything else I've ever experienced.
That's the very truth of it. When you act in service, as the great Muhammad Ali said, this is how I pay my rent to live here on this great earth. And, when you put others in front of yourself and you live selflessly, and you move away from living selfishly, then and only then will you have an opportunity to have a great impact or build a legacy or help people when you're long gone from this earth.
Mhm.
And I've learned that from my mom and dad, because the things they taught me I still use on a daily basis. And I'm grateful that God has shown me this gift. And when you talk about healing, sometimes healing looks like hurting, or it feels like hurting. And sometimes sometimes healing is very painful. But without healing, there's no chance for growth. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And sometimes healing means you got to rip that wound open and look in there and make sure there's nothing bad in there, or let it all go. All the things that don't serve you, you got to let them go.
Yeah,
And then you have a chance for growth.
you pointed to this earlier. I just want to pull it back out again because I feel it's so absolutely transforming. Like it's when I started looking at the world like this, it changed everything for me. And you exemplify this extremely well. Healing to me has become learning to transform experience into meaning, and then to share that meaning with the world. And so it's literally taking my experience, finding meaning from that experience to me, which you have done so powerfully. And then from that meaning, acting in the world.
And that's super important. I mean, we could sit there and blame others for all the bad things we've been through, but we're not going to get anywhere doing that. All we do is lower our vibration. Every time we do things like this, we lower our vibration. Every time we say something bad about ourselves, or we think something bad about ourselves, or we say something bad about somebody else. The thing about saying something bad about other people is your subconscious doesn't know the difference. It thinks you're talking about yourself. And we do all these things to lower our vibration. And then when we're super low and all kinds of things are going wrong, it's human nature to become the why me guy. And I always tell everybody, don't be the why me guy. Don't be that guy. Be the why not me guy. When your plate gets filled and you're faced with the biggest challenges, just say, why not me? Obviously, God has enough confidence in me to give me this, not just to help myself, but to help others too. So if God has that confidence in me, then why shouldn't I have it in myself? But there's a fine line to being confident and being cocky. Yeah, and you have to stay humble. You can't run the risk of being the guy who dislocates his own shoulder, patting himself on the back. And the thing about humility is that if you're not humble, life will humble you to your knees and sometimes onto your back. And I've been on my deathbed. And I used to be that guy. All these things that I talk about, I was that guy. I was the guy who thought I was all this and all that. Until I found out I wasn't. I used to think I was invincible till I was told that I was dying. And then I knew that I wasn't. So I don't talk about anything that I haven't been guilty of. And that's the most important part of my message. I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. But what I will tell them is, when you believe in yourself beyond measure and you eliminate the self-sabotage that we're all guilty of operating in, there's no telling what is possible for you. And we can sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Like the mind is one of it's probably the most powerful thing in your body. But it's only as powerful as what you feed it. It could be your greatest ally or it could be your worst enemy. It just depends on what you feed your mind. And to anybody out there listening, if quitting is an option for you, get rid of it. Get rid of it. Take it out of the equation. Because the thing about quitting is, when you start doing it, it starts out as your last resort. But the more you do it, the quicker it becomes your first option. So just get rid of it. God doesn't make quitters. Society makes quitters. Us operating in self-sabotage makes quitters. God makes winners. God makes warriors. God makes success stories. But we're the ones that mess them up because we doubt ourselves or we feed our fears. Don't give them nothing. Don't give them nothing. Let them die.
Yeah. The story, are you familiar with the story of the two wolves?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's something I'd like to jump back to really quick. This concept of never quitting, never giving up. There's an experience that I've had. I would really love for you to just kind of speak to your experience on this, if this is something that you resonate with or you have experienced yourself. My dad put this absolutely beautifully. I'm going to put it more in Christian terms because this is the language we're using right now. And he said, trust God for every single choice you make, even the shoes you wear each and every day. And I resonate with that so much. I don't think of it in terms of God. Like, I don't really use that language myself, but I get it. Like, I know, I feel that experience. And so to me, this brings me to the distinction between quitting and pivoting. Quitting is exactly what I feel like you're talking about, just letting go of life entirely, like choosing not to live, whether that be consciously or subconsciously. It's giving up. Pivoting is following God. It's seeing, knowing exactly what is present in each and every moment and where God is asking you to go. And trusting that above anything else and following that guidance, that inner voice, that divine spark, that intuition, whatever words resonate the most for you, but it's not quitting, it's pivoting, and it's still being present and living your life to the fullest.
The thing about quitting is giving up. If you have to retool your game plan, that's one thing. But when you just totally abandon your fight, that's not okay. That's not okay at all. Maybe a kid quits a game on the playground and they take their ball. I don't want to play anymore, and they take their ball and go home. But then as they get older, the quitting gets bigger. Maybe they quit school, or they quit a team, and then they quit school, and then they quit a job, and then before you know it, they're quitting on their family. Those things are not okay, because like I said, God doesn't make quitters. But if you have to find a different way to get to where you're going, even if you have to go off road, if that's where God takes you, then go. But See, the thing about faith is, yes, we believe in something. We have faith. But when it leads to trust, that's something more. Because maybe we don't even know where this is headed. But we have to trust that God is taking us the right way. And we have to remember that God's not over there making mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes. We make the mistakes. And then when we have to face the consequences, we want to blame it on God. That's not how it works. But sometimes you even have to go off the road and you got to go through the forest and you got to figure out your own path. And that's where believing in yourself, having faith in yourself comes in. And I remember one time somebody said, "Mark, you look great. How you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling good." And they said, "So you out of the woods?" And I said, "No." "Well, when are you going to be out of the woods?" I said, "Oh, about a week after my funeral." He looked at me like, "What is this guy talking about? How could you say that?" But it's true. I mean, we spend so much energy trying to get out of the woods that we're never going to get out of. Instead of putting that energy into making the woods our own and making them work for us instead of against us. And sometimes you have to take paths that have never been traveled, but you can't have fear about that. And you got to trust that God has you on the right path. And like I said, that's more than faith. Having the faith, if you have a strong enough faith, it'll lead to that trust. But a lot of times it's a blind trust because you don't know where he's going to take you, but he does.
It's so powerful. And I mean, there's so much. I feel like we could talk for hours about this, and I love not only what the power that you share and the inspiration, but it's like how you deliver it it lands and it hits in a way. It's so simple. And one of the things that, and I'll also speak kind of in a Judeo-Christian context, you know, and every religion and spirituality has some version of the same teaching. In the first page of the Bible, what does God do? He creates the world, and creating man in his image is showing us what we too can do. And I see that what you're speaking of in the forest or the woods, not being out of the woods, is you're creating the woods. Like it's part of the experience within the courage of choosing to live and choosing to create. It's looking at chaos in the face, looking at the dragon, looking at Goliath in the face, and saying, I'm gonna find beauty here. I'm gonna find love here. I'm gonna create and be the source of that. And everything in reality says it is conspiring for it not to be. You are the last word. You get to create that in the face of whatever circumstance. And it's like that's what you're creating. It's out of chaos. You're creating beauty and order. And I feel like that very act is exactly what the first page of the Bible talks about. And what I believe is we get to create in the face of whatever fear we might be having, whatever circumstances we might be facing. And you exemplify that. You've created something profoundly beautiful that will not only outlive you, that something I'm not going to forget. And everyone I come across is not going to forget, because I'm inspired by who you are and what you're up to. And it's moving to the core.
Well, we have to remember there's a flip side to everything. Wait, you might get the worst news you've ever gotten in your life, but there's a blessing and a lesson in there somewhere. But if we become the why me guy, we're not gonna get that. We're gonna miss it. And the thing about life is life is hard, and life hurts, and life sucks sometimes. But if you're gonna be waiting for all those things to stop, to find your happiness or your peace, you're going to die waiting. You got to create that amidst all of the craziness that's going on, not just in the world, but even around you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to create your own joy. You have to create your own peace,
Mhm.
because nobody's going to come and do it for you. And it's just like your fight. No one's going to come and fight your battle for you. And if you got to believe in yourself. No one's going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. No one's going to want to fight with you if you're not fighting for yourself. And I talked about being a warrior and that fight might lead to your death. Well, the thing of that is if it does come to that, wherever you show up next, you show up as nothing but a warrior. And that's the good news.
I got to ask a question. This has been bubbling up the last 5 minutes or so. There's an experience of something that happens when I get really calm and relaxed and my mind just kind of goes silent. And it's this experience of like a little pull, like a little tug, like maybe a thought comes up and there's this internal like, oh yeah, that, like my whole being opens up to it. Do that thing, say that thing, like go with that moment and follow that impulse. Right. And to me, that, like, I've always thought of that as intuition. But it's also, I feel like, I wish I could remember his exact words, but Jesus talked about it too. The quiet voice of God. Right. I'm really curious because I can feel that in your words and in your actions, that quiet voice of God. And is
Oh, looks like at the climax of his question, looks like he got cut out.
So it's a little bit. He'll come back.
Yeah, he'll be back. You know, Mark, there's so much depth in your story, and you know, I feel like everybody has something, can see them, especially for me, what you're like, the victim, the why me guy. It's like I feel like most of my pain, most of my suffering has been in that space of, you know, just most of my life growing up, you know, getting bullied, getting picked on, getting all these things. My response and reaction was, you know, woe is me. And, you know, I didn't, you know, I mean, but at the same time, I had to go through that to see my reaction, to see my response to what I was facing and to what I was, you know, stuck on Matthew's back. So I want to let him finish his question, but the why me aspect of your story is like, that's what I'm really taking, is how much I still run back to that why me, to let my actions kind of meander off because the thoughts come up.
The thing about life is we'll all be a victim at some point of something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you continue to stay in that role, you're no longer the victim. You become the volunteer. And so you have a choice whether to remain the victim, become the volunteer, or move out of that space and become the victor. And I think I know where you were leading to, but I'm gonna let you ask your question now, Matthew, that you're back.
Sorry about that. The internet here just dropped. I don't know what happened. Where did I get cut off? What did you hear?
You were just about to ask your question.
Okay. Yeah, so that experience of that inner voice that I was talking about, the voice of God, like I feel that in you. And I really wonder if you can pinpoint the first time you experienced that.
Probably the first time I experienced that was when my mom and dad left my hospital room after those words that they gave me. That's when I had my come to Jesus meeting. And you don't really hear it with your ears. You hear it with your mind and your soul, your spirit. But God was saying, He's right. Stop wasting time. figure it out. And that's when I made my promise that I would never quit. I didn't know how long I'd be able to endure this fight, but I just made a vow that I would never quit. And I had to make that vow over and over throughout the journey, because there was some tough days. There was those days that I didn't think I was going to make it out of. There was those days where I woke up and I was shocked. And then there was even the days where the clock turned from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And I was like, it was unbelievable to me. And those days where the calendar flipped pages to the next month, that's when I was like, wow. But the thing about, when you pray, you're talking to God. But it's important to meditate, because that's when God can talk to you. You clear your mind. You get your breathing going. Clear your mind. That's when God can talk to you. And then when you make your affirmations, that's when you're talking to what God put inside of you. God says, we're made up of his image. Well, he says that because he's put parts of himself inside of us. But we do these things to block all of that. And I compare it to putting on coats, big, huge winter coats, even when it's not winter and we never take them off. We can't tap into any of that when we're all covered up with these things that we don't need. And so when you start clearing things from your life, like forgiving people, or not holding grudges anymore, or even asking for forgiveness from those you have wronged, those things are huge. And you start clearing space, and then you start taking off those layers, and then you're able to receive these messages better. I mean, I remember my first transplant, 7 months before my first transplant. Every morning I'd wake up, I would look to my right 90 degrees, and there it would be waiting. Death. This huge black form that we went from the floor to the ceiling. And it was just hovered there, just hanging, just waiting. And I would stand up and I would turn and I would face it and I would yell at it. I would say, "What do you want? Who told you could hang around my house? I'm not afraid of you. You won't even fight me. You're a coward. You want to stay on the sidelines until I breathe my last and then come in here like some kind of tough guy. You're not tough. Get out of my house." And then I'd go upstairs. I'd shower up. I'd get ready and then go drop my daughter off at high school and then get to the rehab gym for a 2.5-hour workout on 25 liters. Just preparing myself for the fight for my life. And see, as humans, we tend to think we're in control of our lives. And that's usually when we're the most out of control and we don't even know it. God's the one that's in control. And when you give him that and you give him your whole heart, that's when he can talk to you. But he can also talk to you when you're at the edge, about to either do something stupid or you're about to go to your next phase of your journey. But you always have to be open to that. And sometimes we talk to God and we don't hear anything back because we're using our ears. And we have to remember that everything's on God's time. Everything. We want it to be on our time, but it never is. We want what we want, but God gives us what we need first. And sometimes by him not giving us what we want, that's him protecting us. Because he heard conversations we don't hear. He saw things happening we could never see. And so sometimes by him not allowing these things to happen, or as I call them, unanswered prayers, those are the biggest gifts there are, man. And so I know it's hard for people to develop a strong faith and a trust, because it's easy to follow the things of the world. But I made this mistake where I followed all the wrong things of the world, and I got into all the wrong rooms with all the wrong people. And it wasn't until I became about my Father's business that I started getting into the right rooms and around the right people. But that's hard work. It's not easy. And I'm not going to lie to anybody, but it is hard work.
Really, really quick. So when you say the wrong rooms and the wrong people and the right rooms and the right people, how are you defining right and wrong in that instance?
When you leave that room or you're away from those people, how do you feel?
Yeah.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
When you're alone with yourself and you're thinking back to what you did last night, is there any regrets? Is there any bad feelings? Are you feeling like I should probably say sorry to somebody? Then that's how you know.
Yeah.
Are you feeling like you didn't fulfill your purpose or your potential? It's like Michelangelo said it. The greatest danger is not that we set our bar too high and miss it. It's that we set it too low and reach it. And so I always tell everybody, stay hungry and know. My grandpa used to tell me this all the time. And I was this little boy. I didn't even get it then. But later on, as I progressed in life, I understood it so much better. Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. And it really is the truth. You know, good people don't hang around bad people because they won't stay good people for very long. And vice versa. Bad people, if they're hanging around good people, they're not going to stay bad very long. Whatever is happening around you will eventually rub off on you. And you'll eventually start doing the same things. And so hang around people who will challenge you. Hang around people who will hold you accountable. Hang around people who will help you stay hungry and who will not be scared and not be doubtful and not tell you you can't. Because the thing about somebody telling you that you can't, it's not so much that they think that you can't do it. It's that they know they can't do it, but they want to convince you that you can't either. And then when you believe them and you join their sad little club, then they're happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a saying about I can't. And there's 5 words and phrases that are associated with the tools of the week. I can't, but maybe, what if, and I'll try. I can't. The thing about I can't is I'm American and I'm also New Mexican. I'm not American or New Mexican. That might sound corny to some people. But if you put those words on a piece of paper, there's not much difference. The apostrophe mark and another letter. But when you apply them to your life, one will make you, the other one will absolutely break you. But maybe they just cast huge shadows of doubt on everything you're saying and everything you're doing. What if life is never about what if? It's only about what is. It's always about what is.
Wow.
And I'll try is the logo doesn't say just try it. And there's a reason for that. If you say I'll do it, you have about a 90% chance at success. You change one word, and that goes down to 50% with one word. So there is no try, there's only do.
Mm-hmm. It's profound, and I love what you said. From impossible to I'm possible. You have a lot of great isms that I want to steal. You got some.
Steal them, Matt. Steal them. Spread them around. Listen,
oh man,
you gotta share this stuff, because what good am I if when I die I haven't shared all these things with people? Because wherever I go next, I got to get on what's going on there. I can't think that I kept all these secrets to myself and they're going to help me down the road. No, man, you help people by sharing all this stuff, and you help people by teaching. But it's also good to remember that even when you're the teacher, somebody can still teach you something. So you have to be open to learning all the time. If you're not learning, you're not living. If you're not doing what you love, you're not living either. And if you're not helping, you definitely aren't living. You've become the hamster in the wheel.
Mark, I everything that comes out of your mouth, I want to like internalize and write down. It's really such a I'm just moved by, again, who you are and what you're doing for the world and for yourself, and how that gift that just echoes. I want you to come back and share more with us, because you give me you reached a place that I feel like I forget's even there. You know, it's like a reminder of, you know, who I am and what I'm capable of, and it's you just have that effect naturally that I feel more people need to hear your story and the lessons that you're sharing. It's just moving to the core, and I'm just so honored and grateful for you and for you being here sharing with us.
Well, anytime, guys, anytime. I can come back anytime you want, and it's an honor for me to be on this show, and it's an honor for me to share all of these things. When somebody gives you something good in life, you pass it on. That's what you're supposed to do. And you know, like, I don't like it when people tell me, you know, like, you're special. I'm not special. All I'm doing is passing on something that's been given to me, or passing on something that I've learned along the way. That's not special. But we've gone so far out in left field as a society. When you see somebody doing what we're supposed to always be doing, we view it as special. And you know, I'm no different than anybody else. I've just cleared out my mental and emotional garage, and I've taken off all the winter coats that I don't need, and I've tapped into the things that God has gifted us all with. And sharing is that's one of the best feelings in the world.
Oh man, there's I don't know if you guys are familiar. Well, actually, I know Abram. I know you. You're definitely familiar with this, but Mark, I don't know if you're familiar with these guys. The Avett Brothers have this song called "Once and Future Carpenter," and the very last line of the chorus is something that hits me like a ton of bricks every single time I hear it. If I live the life I'm given, I won't be scared to die.
Yeah.
And the tricky part in that to me is, how do I live that life? Like, how do I live that life that I've been given? And what life is it that I've been given? But like you've really brought that around full circle in this really beautiful way, because it's all about service and the way you talk about it. Like, if I follow that voice of God in me all the time, then I'm always in the right room. And the right room is determined by how I feel when I walk out of it. Like you said, like it's that perfect moment of, I was in the right place at the right time, being and saying the exact right thing, because I walked away fulfilled.
And that's the thing is, you have to empty your tank. You have to. You can't be at the end of your life with a 3/4 full tank, because that's where you're going to start choking on regret. I should have did this. I should have did that. You become the shoulda, coulda, woulda guy. Mm-hmm. And that's a bad place to be. When you're on your deathbed, you want to be able to smile and say, you know what? I did do that. I did help these people. I did give them something that's going to outlive me. And I've been on my deathbed, so I know what that neck full of regret is and what it feels like. like you're about to die and you feel like your life isn't finished and you're unfulfilled and you let people down. I remember my daughter looking at me like, how could this be happening? And I just knew that I had not given her enough. And that was one of my biggest reasons for just to keep fighting. That I needed more time with her to give her more of what she needed to be able to navigate this world one day when I wasn't around. And you got to empty your cup. You know, we were always worried about filling our cup up. And even when it runs over, when it runneth over, we're still worried about it staying full. You got to empty it. It'll fill back up. You can't be worried about that. I remember a doctor asking me, are you a half glass or half empty guy? I said, come on, doc, let's get real here. I got one drink left in the glass, but I know it's there when I need it. I had a little bit. It wasn't even close to half. But I knew there was a drink in there when I needed it, and that was good. And, you know, like, don't save anything. Whatever you got every day, empty your tank every day. And when you lay down at night, you know, like, you know what? I gave this day everything I had. I lived it to the fullest. And that way, if, you know, whatever happens, we're only promised one day at a time. So if it is your last day, you know you gave life everything you had on your last day. And I tell people this all the time. Like, every time I go to work, I work like it's the last time I'm ever going to do it, because it might be. And I don't want someone talking trash about me at my funeral saying, man, this guy was lousy that last day he came to work. he didn't do nothing. He just took it easy all day, did bad work. So, you know, everything you do, you got to do it like it's your last day, because all we have is the day we're in. The days that are past, they're gone. There's nothing we could do about them but learn from it. And the days that are ahead, we don't even know if we're going to get them. So be in the moment, live in the day, live it to the fullest, and give it all you got. And if giving it all you got is what you got, then you got to know that quitting is not part of that equation. Ever.
Hell yeah.
Mark, this has been such a big honor and pleasure just to have you share. And I want to have you back. And actually, if you have a quick moment, please stay after the show. I wanted to speak with you for a moment. I'm just really moved by you, and I can't wait for you to be back and to share more with us. Again, like, I just feel like we didn't have to even, like, just letting you speak is really there's so much that comes out that I feel like everybody needs to hear, and then I need to hear. It's just an honor, and I'm grateful for you and for you being with us.
For you guys too. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. Matthew, you want to say anything else before I say goodbye for today with the audience?
No, just thank you. Just thank you. That's all there is, and that's all there needs to be. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Right back at you guys. Right back at you. It was as much an honor for me, and I thank you just as much.
It's well, we're lucky to have you, and thank you all tuning in and being with us, for being with Mark. You know, this is what one day is about. This is, you know, Mark's living his one day today. You know, what if every day could be, you know, your cup, you're emptying your cup for others and letting everybody receive the gift that you are and that you have. And it just gives me the chills, you know, and I'm thrilled that Mark shared it in a way that I think we all needed to hear. But I want to invite you to be on this stage. You know, the stage is about you and the gift that you have, or the gifts you have to share. And we all want to receive the gifts, just like Mark. but share your story with us, and we want to invite you to be a guest on the stage, because that's why we're here, is to just to share the impossible, like Mark did, and what you're overcoming, what you're facing, what you have faced in your life. We want to hear what beauty and what you've created on the other side of that. That's part of our mission here, is bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And that's part of our one-day vision, which is humanity rising in a connected world with each person's unique gifts, unique genius, unique contributions being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you again to Mark. We'll see you all next week. And as always, one day is today. Peace, everybody.
Aloha.